Hi everybody, myself Dr. Raj Kokila, your Diginerve Anatomy faculty. In this session, we are going to see about a very interesting and important topic, nerve supply of the limb muscles. Whether it be your INICT or NEET PG entrance examination, definitely under anatomy, there's going to be one question related to nerve supply, maybe more than one also. Okay, so indirect MCQ or an image-based question most frequently or a case-based scenario. In this session, we are going to cover the nerve supply of around 50 muscles in upper limb and 51 muscles in lower limb. That makes to around 100 muscles, right? So in case before your exam, you want to flip through the pages of textbook to know the muscle, identify it in an image, to know its nerve supply and important clinical anatomy related to the topic, it might take you hours. But in this session, yes, around 20 to 30 minutes maximum, we're going to cover 100 muscles in an image-based format, right? Their nerve supply and some clinical anatomy related to those topics. So shall we start? Yes. Every slide that you're going to see in this session, you're going to see an image orient to it. You're going to identify the muscle on that image, and then we're going to talk about its nerve supply and some clinical anatomy. So to start with, upper limb. So this is a very frequently given image in your previous year question papers, showing the muscles in the back region, right? So can you identify the muscles here? The muscles, flat muscles that you see in the superficial layer over the back this is going to be the trapezius and this is the latissimus dorsi. So once you're able to identify the muscle, come on, give me its nerve supply. The trapezius is going to be innervated by, yes, the spinal accessory nerve. There's one more muscle innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. Anyone? Yes, you're right. The sternocleidomastoid muscle of the neck, when it contracts, right, it turns the chin to the opposite side and the head is the same side as that of the shoulder. The spinal accessory nerve supplies only two muscles in the entire human body, the trapezius and the sternocleidomastoid, right? Latissimus dorsi. That is going to be innervated by the thoracodorsal nerve. The thoracodorsal nerve, it arises from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. Another interesting thing is that it is the only nerve with the root value C6, C7, C8, and you need not confuse it with any other nerves, right? Root value. Okay. What are the muscles that help you for overhead elevation of the arm? You want to comb your hair, you want to paint the ceiling. Yes, the fibers of trapezius and serratus anterior are responsible for overhead elevation of arm. So please remember that. Okay, moving on to the other muscles that you see here in this image. I'm going to help you identify it. Can you make out the scapula here? Yes, this is the spinous process of the scapula. The muscle that you see above the spinous process, this is the supraspinatus. And here is the infraspinatus. Once you identify these two muscles, they share a common nerve supply. Yes, from the Erb's point, the suprascapular nerve innervates both the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus. Now, this is the medial border of the scapula. Yes, what are the muscles that are attached to the medial border of the scapula? This one is the levator scapulae. The fibers, when it contracts, it can elevate the scapula. And this is the rhomboids minor and this is the rhomboids major, both of which help to retract the scapula, bring the medial border of the scapula towards the midline. Okay, now these three muscles attached to the medial border, all of them, they are going to be innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve. Okay, Coming to the lateral border of the scapula, there are two muscles that you see here. The one at the top is the teres minor, and this one is the teres major. Any idea what is the nerve that innervates teres minor? Yes, it's the axillary nerve, right? One another muscle innervated by the axillary nerve, anyone? The deltoid. So the axillary nerve coming from the posterior cord, yes, innervates teres minor and deltoid. Any condition where the axillary nerve can get injured? Yes, anterior dislocation of the humerus, the head of the humerus, fracture of the surgical neck of the humerus can injure the axillary nerve. Okay, and teres major nerve supply, that is innervated by the lower subscapular nerve. So there are two subscapular nerves, the upper and lower subscapular nerve, that is going to innervate a muscle that you see on the anterior surface of the scapula, the subscapularis. So what do you mean by the term hybrid muscles? Muscles which have a dual nerve supply. So the subscapularis getting innervation from the upper and lower subscapular nerve, which are both branches from the posterior cord of brachial plexus, is considered to be a hybrid muscle. So okay with the muscles over the back region, the trapezius, latissimus dorsi, and the scapular muscles with their nerve supply, right? Coming to the muscles of the pectoral region, very easy. Recently, right, the previous year, we had a question, cadaveric image over pectoralis minor, right? So what you see here over the pectoral region, this is the pectoralis major. If I cut and reflect it, what will I get to see underneath it? The clavipectoral fascia enclosing the pectoralis minor and the subclavius muscle that lies beneath the clavicle, isn't it? So the pectoralis major is again a hybrid muscle which is going to be innervated by both medial pectoral nerve and lateral pectoral nerve. You know something that's interesting about it? The lateral pectoral nerve has to pierce the clavipectoral fascia to innervate the overlying pectoralis major, right? Similarly, the medial pectoral nerve, it has to pierce the pectoralis minor to supply the overlying pectoralis major. The pectoralis minor is mostly innervated by the medial pectoral nerve that pierces it. But in addition, few fibers of the lateral pectoral nerve can innervate the pectoralis minor. Another very important muscle that you see here, come on, tell me. In the medial wall of the axilla or over the lateral thoracic wall, forming the bed for the mammary gland, is the serratus anterior. And that is going to be innervated by the long thoracic nerve. So, during radical mastectomy or during axillary lymph node clearance, this nerve running along the medial wall of the axilla can get accidentally injured. What will happen then? We know that the serratus anterior helps in protraction of the scapula. So when the long thoracic nerve is injured, you ask the patient to push his hands against the wall. You can see that what happens? The serratus anterior is paralyzed, so protraction is not possible. The scapula move towards the midline by the contraction of the antagonist muscles, rhomboids minor and major, which are attached to the medial border, which becomes prominent, and the scapula sorts of stands out on the thoracic wall. This condition is called as the winging of scapula. In case of injury to the long thoracic nerve, the nerve to serratus anterior or nerve of Bell. Fine. Coming to the most important muscle in the upper limb, the deltoid. The fibers of the deltoid, the anterior fibers, they originate from the clavicle. They flex the arm. The middle fibers originate from the acromion process of the scapula. They are multipennate and they cause abduction of the arm from 15 to 90 degree. The posterior fibers from the spinous process, they can extend the arm. So the deltoid is a very important muscle over the shoulder. And you know that the intramuscular injection in the upper lip is into the deltoid. What is the nerve supply? It is going to be innervated by the axillary nerve, which also innervates one another muscle in the back region. What's that? Yes, you're right, the teres minor. So, when there is an injury to the axillary nerve, as in case of fracture surgical neck of humerus because it binds around the posterior surface of the surgical neck of humerus, or anterior dislocation of the head of the humerus, can injure the axillary nerve. Paralysis of deltoid muscle, patient cannot abduct his arm from 15 to 90 degree. So paralysis of the deltoid, the round contour of the shoulder is lost. And one more feature, this axillary nerve has a cutaneous branch, right? The upper lateral cutaneous nerve of arm. So if you're going to prick with a pin over that area, patient is not going to feel any sensation in axillary nerve injury. And what is that term given? Yes, the regimental badge of anesthesia, right? Over the upper lateral part of the arm where the soldiers wear their badge, right? Now let's move on to the arm. So arm, we have muscles in the front of the arm and over the back of the arm. In the front of the arm, there are three muscles. Yes, the one important muscle here is the biceps brachii, right? The biceps brachii, which has two heads. This is the long head which originates from the supraglenoid tubercle. It lies within the capsule of the shoulder joint and hence it is called as intracapsular in origin. And this is the short head originating from the coracoid process, the biceps brachii. This small muscle that you see here medially, this one is the coracobrachialis. And the third muscle, to see that, I need to remove the biceps brachii because it occupies the lower part of the anterior surface of the humerus. It's the brachialis. So what are the three muscles that you see in the front of the arm? The coracobrachialis that doesn't cross your elbow joint. Okay, it is inserted in the middle of the arm. The biceps brachii and the brachialis, they are powerful flexors of your elbow. In addition, the biceps brachii is a supinator. Okay, it is a powerful supinator of your flexed forearm, the biceps brachii. All these three muscles are going to be innervated by the musculocutaneous nerve that arises from the lateral cord of the brachial plexus. This musculocutaneous nerve, again, its termination is important. It supplies the three muscles in the front of the arm and then it continues further downwards into the forearm as lateral cutaneous nerve of forearm. So, if there's an injury to the musculocutaneous nerve, what will the patient present with? Difficulty to flex the elbow and loss of sensation along the lateral part of the forearm. Is that okay? Another important point to note is that the brachialis muscle again has dual nerve supply. So the motor fibers are innervated by the musculocutaneous nerve. Proprioceptive fibers, right? They receive the innervation from the radial nerve. Hence, we call it as a hybrid muscle with dual nerve supply. Fine. I would like to add one more point. Rupture of the long head of biceps. Okay. You can see that it presents as a bulge in the middle of the arm. This is called as the Popoi sign. This was also a MCQ, one of the question in your NEET PG INICT. Again, musculocutaneous nerve is a very important topic for a case-based scenario, and it has been asked recently. Moving to the back of arm, there's only one muscle over the back of the arm, the triceps, with three heads. The long head of triceps, it originates from the infraglenoid tubercle, and then we get to see the lateral head and the medial head from the posterior surface of the humerus. And triceps is going to be innervated by Yes, the radial nerve. The radial nerve is coming from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. That is the largest branch of the brachial plexus. It's going to supply the muscles over the posterior surface of the arm as well as the posterior surface of the forearm. The triceps, yes, it is a extensor of the elbow joint, right? It straightens out your elbow. So now moving on to the forearm. So again, forearm, we are going to learn as the muscles in the front of forearm and the muscles over the back of forearm. The muscles in the front of forearm, yes, I'll help you identify it. So let us orient to this image, which is medial and which is lateral. The cubital fossa will give you an idea to it. What is the arrangement of structures in the cubital fossa? Yes, MBBR, isn't it? So this is the median nerve you see medially. We'll mark it, right? Yeah, and then you get to see the brachial artery, the biceps tendon. Between the biceps and brachialis, you'll get to see the radial nerve. Okay? So this is medial, this is lateral. Now, this muscle that you see here is the pronator teres. This one next to it is the flexor carpi radialis. This is the palmaris longus. The one at the medial border, that is the flexor carpi ulnaris. And the lateral border is the brachioradialis. Now, between these fibers peeping out, this is the flexor digitorum superficialis. Talking about their nerve supply, right? Pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor digitorum superficialis, all of them are going to be innervated by the median nerve. Then what about these two muscles? Flexor carpi ulnaris, right? It's going to be innervated by the ulnar nerve. What about brachioradialis? By the radial nerve. Mind it? This brachioradialis that you see over the anterior aspect of the forearm, okay? It can flex your elbow joint, right? But it is going to be innervated by the radial nerve. It is a muscle from the extensor compartment that has migrated to the anterior aspect of the forearm for functional reasons, right? So flexor of the elbow innervated by radial nerve, yes, it's the brachioradialis. Now, once I dissect all these muscles, I'll get to see three muscles in the deeper plane. What are they? Okay, so here again, this is your thumb, this is little finger, isn't it? So this is going to be lateral and this is going to be medial. The three deeper muscles in the front of forearm, they are the flexor pollicis longus that you see here, the flexor digitorum profundus dividing into four tendons for the index finger, for the middle finger, for the ring finger and the little finger. And then this is the pronator quadratus. You know what? All these three muscles are going to be innervated by a branch of the median nerve called anterior interosseous nerve. Right? So this anterior interosseous nerve, it innervates flexor pollicis longus, pronator quadratus, and flexor digitorum profundus tendon to the index finger and the middle finger. What about the other two tendons? The tendon for the ring finger and the little finger, they are going to be innervated by the ulnar nerve, right? So this is again a very frequently asked question in your competitive examination. You're able to bend, flex the distal phalanx of the thumb and the distal phalanx of the index finger and make a perfect O. Yes, which means that your anterior interosseous nerve is intact. But if in case your anterior interosseous nerve has injured, you can see that the distal phalanx, okay, it cannot be flexed. the distal phalanx of the thumb receives the insertion of flexor pollicis longus. The distal phalanx of the index finger receives the insertion of flexor digitorum profundus, which is innervated by the anterior interosseous nerve, that's a branch of the median nerve, right? Back of forearm. Back of forearm, this small muscle that you see here is the anconeus, right? And here, this is extensa carpi radialis longus, extensa carpi radialis brevis. These muscles which are peeping out, abductor pollicis longus, extensa pollicis brevis. One more to the thumb, extensa pollicis longus. Passing through the fourth compartment of the extensa retinaculum, we have the extensa digitorum, extensa indicis. This is extensa digiti minimi and the border muscle, extensa carpi ulnaris. Do you have to remember the name of all these muscles? Not necessary, but please remember they're all going to be innervated by the radial nerve, right? The anconeus extensa carpi radialis longus. The rest are going to be innervated by the deep branch of the radial nerve, which is the posterior interosseous nerve, right? So one muscle that I would like to show in a separate diagram image is the supinator muscle. The deep branch of the radial nerve, that's the posterior interosseous nerve, it passes between the superficial and the deep fibers of the supinator muscle and can get compressed there. So one classical feature of radial nerve injury, yes, you're right, it is the wrist drop. Wrist drop, yes, finger drop and thumb drop. Moving on to the intrinsic muscles of hand. Very, very, very important. Definitely some question or the other comes from this area. So coming to the muscles which are present in the hand. So this is your thumb. This is the little finger. The bulge that you see below the thumb, this is called as the thenar muscles, right? And below the little finger, this bulge is called the hypothenar muscles. But superficial to the hypothenar muscles, you get to see a thin muscle there, remnant of panniculus carnosus. Yes, you're right. It is the palmaris brevis, right? So the thenar muscles and hypothenar muscles, I'll give you one easy important clue to identify. In the thenar and hypothenar, the muscles at the border, they are the abductor, right? The outer border of the thenar and hypothenar is the abductor. So this is going to be abductor pollicis brevis, right? This will be abductor digiti minimi. And inner to it, it's going to be flexor pollicis brevis. Between the abductor pollicis brevis and flexor pollicis brevis, something inner to it will be the opponens pollicis. Similarly, for the hypothenar muscles, you get to see the abductor digiti minimi. This is the flexor digiti minimi. If I separate the both and I see in between, on a deeper plane will be the opponens digiti minimi. Another very, very important muscle going towards the thumb, right? This one, help me identify, is the adductor pollicis. You can make out the tendons of flexor digitorum profundus originating from the sides of the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus is the lumbricals. How many lumbricals are there? Four, right? The first, second, third, and fourth. Yes. And apart from that, you get to see the palmar interossei, which are unipennate, and these are the dorsal interossei, which are bipennate. So these are all the muscles in the hand. The intrinsic muscles of the hand is again a very important topic. The thenar, the hypothenar, the palmaris brevis, the adductor pollicis, the four lumbrical, the palmar interossei, and the dorsal interossei. Coming to its nerve supply, so the thenar muscles, the three thenar muscles, the abductor pollicis brevis, the flexor pollicis brevis, and the opponens pollicis. All of them are going to be innervated by the median nerve, which also innervates lumbricals first and second. The lumbricals, the opponens pollicis, the abductor pollicis brevis, the flexor pollicis brevis. The loaf muscles innervated by the median nerve, all the other intrinsic muscles in the hand. Yes, including the palmaris brevis, the three hypothenar muscles, the lumbricals, third and fourth, the palmar interossei, the dorsal interossei, okay, all of them, plus the adductor pollicis is innervated by the ulnar nerve. This is very, very, very important. Okay. So palmar interossei, they help to adduct the fingers. The dorsal interossei abduct the fingers. What does the lumbricals do? Any idea? The lumbricals have the origin over the anterior surface right in the palm. And what happens after that? They pass through the web space, right? And they insert over the dorsal surface of the digits into the extensor expansion. So when they contract, this is what happens. A L, a bent L, right? An inverted L. They can flex your metacarpophalangeal joint and extend the interphalangeal joint. So when the lumbrical goes for a paralysis, what happens? The reversal, extension of the metacarpophalangeal joint and flexion of the interphalangeal joint, which is called as claw hand, right? And there are four lumbricals. The first and second are innervated by median nerve. So median nerve injury, there'll be clawing of the is index finger, middle finger. Whereas the third and fourth lumbricals innervated by the ulnar nerve. So ulnar claw hand typically involves the little finger and the ring finger. Is that fine? Okay. So this is a summary of the nerve supply of the important muscles, or on the other way, there are three important peripheral nerves in the upper limb which are frequently tested: median nerve, ulnar nerve, radial nerve. If you try to summarize the muscles innervated by these nerves, you can see that the median nerve innervates most of the muscles in the forearm, in the front of the forearm, right? And the loaf muscles in the palm, right? What about the ulnar nerve? The ulnar nerve in the forearm, it innervates 1.5 muscles: the flexor carpi ulnaris and the flexor digitorum profundus tendon to the ring finger and the little finger. And in the hand, as you have seen, most of the muscles in the hand, they are innervated by the ulnar nerve. And please do remember adductor pollicis, right? What is the name of the test done to, to test the intactness of adductor pollicis? You give a book to the patient and ask him to hold, right? He has to adduct his thumb to hold the book. But if his ulnar nerve is injured, you can see that he will try to hold the book by flexion of his thumb, right? This is called as the book test. And if the thumb is flexed, in that case, it's called as the Frohman sign. That is again a high yield topic when coming to your competitive exams, right? The Frohman sign. And radial nerve, yes, that innervates all the muscles that you see in the posterior compartment of the arm and the forearm. And please remember, the radial nerve has no role in innervating the muscles of the hand, right? Again, classical feature of radial nerve injury is wrist drop. And as I told you, ulnar claw hand, median, the opponent's pollicis is paralyzed, right? And then the hand of benediction, all that. So apart from the three important nerves, other three more nerves are there, again, which can be framed as a case-based scenario for you. The musculocutaneous nerve injury. Yes, the patient will not be able to flex his elbow, loss of sensation over the lateral aspect of the forearm. Axillary nerve injury. round contour of the shoulder is lost, patient will not be able to abduct 15 to 90 degree, and loss of sensation over the upper lateral arm, regimental badge of anesthesia, isn't it? And long thoracic nerve again, serratus anterior paralyzed, that's a protractor of the scapula that will lead to winging of scapula. So is that fine? Yes, we have done the nerve supply of around 50 muscles in upper limb. Shall we move on to lower limb now? Now let us move on to the nerve supply of the muscles of lower limb, right? To start with, this cross section will help us orient to the muscles of thigh. The bone that you see here is the femur, and this is the sciatic nerve that lies in the back of the thigh, isn't it? So this is posterior, this is anterior. This is the region of the adductor canal. This is the sartorius muscle forming the roof of the adductor canal, right? So the adductor canal, it lies over the medial aspect of the thigh. This is medial and this is lateral. So as far as thigh is concerned, we can divide the muscles of the thigh into three compartments. The front of thigh, the back of thigh, right? And the medial side of thigh. Okay? Right. The muscles which lie in the front of the thigh, they cause extension of the knee. So, it's the quadriceps and it's called the extensor compartment. The muscles which lie in the back of the thigh, they can flex the knee. And the muscle group present there is the hamstring muscles, right? And the muscles in the medial side of the thigh, they can help you adduct the thigh. So it's called the adductor compartment. The muscles that lie in the front of the thigh, the quadriceps femoris, which can extend your knee, is going to be innervated by the femoral nerve that lies in the front of the thigh. The hamstrings that lie in the back of the thigh, they are innervated by the tibial component of sciatic nerve. And the muscles that lie in the medial side of the thigh, they are innervated by the, yes, the obturator nerve. Now come on, let us identify the muscles. So over the front of thigh, yes, easy to identify, that is the sartorius. The deep fascia of the thigh, it's called the fascia lata. And this muscle that you see over the lateral aspect, that is the tensa fascia lata, inserting into the iliotibial tract. Now, between these two, this bulk of muscle that you see here, that is the quadriceps femoris, right? What are the four components of the quadriceps femoris? This is the vastus medialis. Okay, this is the antero-superior iliac spine. Here is going to be the pubic symphysis. So this is medial and this is lateral. This is the vastus lateralis and this is the rectus femoris. Right? So where is the fourth one? The vastus intermedius. If I reflect rectus femoris, beneath it, I'll be able to see the vastus intermedius. Okay? Now, apart from that, few other muscles that I'm going to show you here. In the floor of the femoral triangle, this is the iliacus, this is the psoas major, right? This is the pectineus muscle of the medial side of thigh. This is the adductor longus of medial side of thigh. This is the gracilis of the medial side of thigh. Yes, now once you know the name of the muscles and you can identify it on the image, let's talk about the nerve supply. The quadriceps femoris, all the four, they are innervated by the femoral nerve that lies in the front of the thigh. Also, the sartorius, that is also innervated by the femoral nerve. Right. Now, The tensa fascia lata, any idea? What is the nerve innervating the tensa fascia lata? That's clinically important. Come on. It is the superior gluteal nerve that also innervates the gluteus medius and minimus muscle. Okay. Now, coming to iliacus and psoas muscle. The nerve to iliacus is again a branch from the femoral nerve. The psoas major gets its nerve supply directly from lumbar plexus. Pectineus, adductor longus gracilis, all of them are going to be innervated by the obturator nerve. But please make a note of it. Pectineus, right? Pectineus is a muscle with dual nerve supply. It's not only obturator nerve, it is also the femoral nerve, right? So pectineus is a hybrid muscle with dual nerve supply. Okay, so femoral nerve innervates the four components of quadriceps femoris, the sartorius, the iliacus, and pectineus in the front of thigh. Now moving on to the, yes, and you know that, yes, the muscles in the front of the thigh, they can extend your knee, helps you in standing. The muscles over the medial side of the thigh, yes, we have already seen pectineus, right? So this is the pectineus with dual nerve supply. This is adductor longus, and the medial most muscle, which you cannot mistake, is the gracilis. Okay, guys, please do remember, okay, this is basic, a very simple, important topic. But in case you get a question on it and you don't remember or you're not able to recollect, yes, you cannot excuse yourself. This is something that is like must know. You should be thorough of a tip of your fingers. You're expected to know it, right? Yes. So now, if I remove the pectineus adductor longus, I'll be able to see adductor brevis. And this is one important muscle with five openings in it. Any idea what is it? Yes, it's the adductor magnus muscle. There are five openings in this muscle. For what? The fifth opening, the femoral artery continues into the popliteal fossa as popliteal artery. The popliteal vein will continue into front of thigh as femoral vein. The upper four openings are for the perforators that arise from the profunda femoris artery, right? Okay, and there's one more important muscle that you see here. It's the obturator externus. So all the muscles that you see here in the medial side of the thigh, the pectineus, adductor longus, adductor brevis, magnus gracilis, they are going to help in adduction of the thigh, and some of them cause medial rotation. What about this obturator externus? It is going to cause lateral rotation of the thigh. And remember, that's going to be innervated by the obturator nerve. Fine? Let's move on to the muscles over the back of the thigh. We are calling them as hamstrings, isn't it? So again, medial lateral orientation. Yes, you see the iliotibial tract, the thickening of the deep fascia of the thigh. This is the tensa fascia lata muscle. This is lateral. This is medial. Okay. So over the medial aspect, right? This one is the semimembranosus, and over it lies the semitendinosus. So you can imagine the semimembranosus as a bed, and over the top of it, the person lying, that is the semitendinosus on the medial aspect. Over the lateral aspect, right, this is the biceps femoris. You know what? The biceps femoris is the only muscle inserting into the head of fibula. All the other muscles of the leg, they originate from the fibula. Okay? Now, yes, to call it as a hamstring muscle, they have to satisfy four criteria. They should have origin from the ischial tuberosity. They should cross the hip joint, knee joint, and insert into one of the leg bones, either tibia or fibula. They should be innervated by the tibial component of sciatic nerve, and they should cause, yes, extension of the hip joint and flexion of the knee joint. Satisfying all these four criteria, we have the semi-tendinosus and semi-membranosus. We call them as the true hamstring, right? The biceps femoris and adductor magnus, they are bit modification. Adductor magnus will not cross the knee joint. It inserts into the adductor tubercle, right? And when I say biceps femoris, it has two heads, the long head and the short head. So in this picture, deeper part, you can see the adductor magnus, the ischial part of adductor magnus contributing to the hamstring part. And this is the short head of biceps femoris originating from the linea aspera. We are not including it under hamstring. Why? Because that is going to receive innervation from the common peroneal component of the sciatic nerve. All the others are innervated by the tibial component of the sciatic nerve. Fine. Now, moving on to the gluteal region. Yes, here again, this is lateral, this is medial. This is, of course, the gluteus maximus that is going to be innervated by the inferior gluteal nerve. The inferior gluteal nerve innervates only one muscle, that's the gluteus maximus. Now, the intramuscular injection that you put into the gluteal region is into which muscle? The gluteus medius. So here, this is the gluteal aponeurosis. Underneath it lies the gluteus medius, right? Into the outer quadrant, upper outer quadrant. Okay. Once the gluteus maximus is removed or cut and reflected, underneath it you can see the gluteus medius muscle with the overlying gluteal aponeurosis. This is gluteus minimus. You can see that beneath the, below the gluteus minimus in the same plane, the key muscle of the gluteal region, this is the piriformis, right? So you can see the sciatic nerve emerging below the piriformis. This is the inferior gluteal nerve that goes to supply the gluteus maximus. This is the superior gluteal nerve that's going to innervate the gluteus medius, the gluteus minimus, and this muscle, the tensa fascia lata. Okay, so the piriformis is going to be innervated by fibers coming from the sacral plexus itself, S1, S2. Below the piriformis, what you get to see here, forming the bed for the sciatic nerve, this is the superior gemelli, this is inferior gemelli, and this is the tendon of obturator internus. Gemelli means twins, okay? And this is quadratus femoris. The superior gemelli and tendon of obturator internus are innervated by nerve to obturator internus. The inferior gemelli and the quadratus femoris, they are innervated by the nerve to quadratus femoris. Okay. Now, please remember the gluteus maximus. It helps in extension of the hip joint. Then the gluteus medius and minimus, they are abductors and medial rotators of the hip joint. All these, along with the gluteus maximus, are lateral rotators of the hip joint. This is important. Moreover, here, this is again a very important high-yield topic. What is Trendelenburg sign? So, when one leg is off the ground, the pelvis on that side has a tendency to sink. But it doesn't happen. It'll look awkward while walking, right? This is because of the contraction of the gluteus medius and minimus of the opposite side. So, if my left leg is raised, my right glutei medii minimi, they are contracting to steady the pelvis on the left side. If there is injury to the superior gluteal nerve on the right, there is paralysis of the glutei medius and minimus on the right side. The pelvis will sink on the left. Okay, so this is again a high yield topic. the muscles of the gluteal region and their nerve supply. Maximus, inferior gluteal nerve. Medius, minimus and tensa fascia lata, superior gluteal nerve. Right? Medius and minimus and tensa fascia lata, they are medial rotators of the hip. Maximus and all these small muscles, they are the lateral rotators. Yes, now moving on to the compartments of the leg. Yeah. So this is the tibia. This is fibula. This is going to be medial. This is going to be lateral. Okay. You can put your fingers and feel your leg front and back, which looks more bulkier. Yes, there are more muscles in the back, the calf region, right? So this is going to be the posterior compartment or the back of leg, the calf, right? This is the front or the anterior compartment of the leg. And here we have the lateral compartment, the side of the leg. So remember thigh, we divided into front of thigh with the femoral nerve, back of thigh with the tibial component of the sciatic nerve, and medial side of the thigh with the obturator nerve. Now coming to leg, it's again front of leg, back of leg, and the lateral compartment of leg, right? So the muscles in the front of the leg, what will be their action at the ankle joint? They will cause dorsiflexion, right? They'll all try to elevate your ankle upwards, dorsiflexion. The muscles at the back of the leg, they will cause plantar flexion, right? What does the muscles in the lateral compartment of the leg do? They evert your foot. They are the everters, eversion. Now, the muscles in the front of the leg, they're all going to be innervated by, yes, the deep peroneal nerve. The muscles in the back of the leg, they're all going to be innervated by tibial nerve. And the muscles in the lateral compartment of the leg, they are going to be innervated by superficial peroneal nerve. So let us start identifying the muscles now, shall we? Coming to the muscles in the front of the leg, you see the tibia here. Just next to it, this is the tibialis anterior, right? And this one going to the great toe, that is going to be the extensor hallucis longus, right? And just lateral to it, this is going to be the extensor digitorum longus. And these muscle fibers that you get to see here is the peroneus tertius. All these muscles will cause dorsiflexion at the ankle joint. And as I told you, they are going to be innervated by the deep peroneal nerve. So injury to the deep peroneal nerve, injury to the common peroneal nerve, when it winds around the neck of the fibula, as in case of a fracture neck of the fibula, is again a very high topic, repeatedly asked. It's a PYQ, right? So the common peroneal nerve winds around the neck of the fibula. The fracture neck of the fibula can injure the common peroneal nerve. You know, common peroneal nerve is the one dividing into superficial peroneal nerve and deep peroneal nerve, right? So injury to the common peroneal nerve or injury to the deep peroneal nerve, paralysis of the muscles in the front of leg, and dorsiflexion is not possible. The foot goes for a drop, right? Foot drop. So patient will present with a high stepping gait. Characteristic of deep peroneal nerve injury, and please do remember fracture neck of fibula. And one more muscle in the dorsum of the foot, the extensor digitorum brevis. That is again innervated by the deep peroneal nerve. So this image is showing you the lateral side of the leg, and what are the two muscles there? This one here is the peroneus longus, and beneath it will be the peroneus brevis, and both are innervated by superficial peroneal nerve, right? And these are everters of the foot. Coming to the back of leg, the calf muscles. The one that you see here is the gastrocnemius, the medial and lateral. How to figure out which one is medial and which one is lateral? So this is the region of popliteal fossa. You get to see the popliteal artery, the popliteal vein in blue. The yellow, what is that? This one straight, this is the tibial nerve. Remember, the sciatic nerve is the thickest nerve in the human body, and we saw it in the back of thigh. At the upper angle of popliteal fossa, the sciatic nerve is going to divide into two. The tibial nerve, which goes straight in the midline into the back of leg, and the common peroneal nerve that goes towards the fibula laterally, right? So this is the common peroneal nerve. So this is lateral, this is medial. So this should be a great clue for you to identify these sites. This is the lateral head of gastrocnemius. This is the medial head of gastrocnemius. Okay. So once we reflect the head of the gastrocnemius, we can get to see the peripheral heart, the soleus. And please do remember this small triangular muscle that you see above the origin of soleus, that is the popliteus, the muscle that helps you to unlock your knee joint, right? Yes. And we saw in upper limb, the long head of biceps brachii is intracapsular in origin. Similarly, the popliteus is intracapsular in origin. Okay. Now, all of them are going to be innervated by the tibial nerve. That's fine. Now, there are a few more deeper muscles in the back of the leg, right? So here again, this is going to be medial and this is lateral. Right. So this tendon and the muscle that you see here, this is the tibialis posterior. And here again, this is flexor digitorum longus. And here, this here is the flexor hallucis longus going towards the great toe. Okay. So all these are going to be again innervated by the tibial nerve. You know that the tibial nerve beneath the flexor retinaculum, it's going to divide into the medial and lateral plantar nerve that reaches the sole to supply the muscles in the sole. Yes. Now let's move on to the muscles of the sole. And just before that, we saw that injury to the deep peroneal nerve, the patient will not be able to dorsiflex and the patient will present with the foot drop, isn't it? Similarly, the tibial nerve that supplies the muscles in the back of the leg that helps in plantar flexion, right? So if there's an injury to the tibial nerve, the patient will not be able to plantar flex. The foot will be dorsiflex and the patient will walk on heel. Okay. Coming to the last part of today's session, muscles of sole. Again, it is important. Over the years, they've started asking questions in sole, the muscle and nerve supply. Right. So the muscles of the sole, they can be classified into layers. Immediately beneath the skin and the plantar aponeurosis, in the first layer, we'll come across three muscles. You can see the great toe, right? This is medial, this is lateral. The one, as I told you, remember in the thenar and hypothenar, I told you the one at the borders, they are the abductors, right? So this is abductor hallucis. And this is abductor digiti minimi. And this muscle you can see dividing into four tendons. This is the flexor digitorum brevis. You will not have a confusion in identifying if you have understood, right? So I'll help you identify the muscles and last we can go to the nerve supply. And if I remove these muscles, okay, the next layer, I'll get to see two important tendons coming from the back of the leg and going to the sole. The one reaching the great toe. As I told you, this is medial, this is lateral. This is the tendon of flexor hallucis longus. And this is the tendon of flexor digitorum longus. Once you have identified these two tendons, easy. This muscle you see inserting into the tendon of flexor digitorum longus is the flexor digitorum accessorius or quadratus plantae. And originating from the sides of the tendon of flexor digitorum longus, can you identify the lumbricals now? The first, the second, the third, and the fourth lumbrical, right? Now, moving on to a deeper layer, again we'll get to see few important muscles. So this is medial, this is lateral. This one for the great toe, this is the flexor hallucis brevis. And this one going towards the great toe, this is the adductor hallucis. And this one for the little toe, this is the flexor digiti minimi brevis. These are the three muscles, okay, in the third layer. Now, if I remove these muscles, again, I'll get to see two important tendons here. This tendon, which is going to cross all the way from lateral to medial, any idea? It's the tendon of peroneus longus. And this tendon that's going to insert into most of the tarsal bones is none other than the tendon of the tibialis posterior. And in the deeper layer, we'll get to see the interossei, the plantar interossei and the dorsal interossei. Okay, so each layer, name of the muscle identify in the image. Now moving on to a least complicated part, nerve supply. Okay, so in the hand, we saw median nerve and ulnar nerve. Similarly, in the sole, we are going to see the medial plantar nerve and the lateral plantar nerve. And you can obviously make out the medial plantar nerve is just going to supply only four muscles. What are they? Yes, the flexor, yeah, digitorum brevis that we saw in the first layer in the center, the abductor hallucis, yeah, that we saw in the first layer, and then the first lumbrical, and the third layer we saw one in the great toe, right? The flexor hallucis brevis. Okay. So to the great toe, we have the abductor hallucis, flexor hallucis brevis, the first lumbrical, and the flexor digitorum brevis. All these are innervated by medial plantar nerve. All the rest, yes, you can take, it's the lateral plantar nerve. Is that okay? So to summarize, yes, come on, let me see. What are the muscles which have an intracapsular origin? In the upper limb, it is the long head of biceps. And in the lower limb, it is popliteus. Do you remember any muscles, hybrid muscles with dual nerve supply in upper limb and lower limb? In the upper limb, yes, over the pectoral region, we saw the pectoralis major innervated by medial and lateral pectoral nerve. In the scapular region, the subscapular is innervated by upper and lower subscapular nerve. In the front of arm, brachial is receiving dual nerve supply from the musculocutaneous nerve and proprioceptive fibers from the radial nerve. In the front of forearm, flexor digitorum profundus, and then the lumbricals, isn't it? Flexor digitorum profundus, the tendon to the index finger, middle finger by median nerve, anterior interosseous nerve. For the ring finger and little finger, ulnar nerve, right? And lumbricals 1 and 2, median nerve. 3 and 4, ulnar nerve. Coming to lower limb, do you remember any muscles with dual nerve supply? Yes, we started with pectineus from femoral nerve and then also the obturator nerve. Adductor magnus receiving nerve supply from obturator nerve as well as tibial component of sciatic nerve. And then again, lumbricals in lower limb, please remember, the first lumbrical is by medial plantar nerve, the second, third and fourth is by the lateral plantar nerve. Okay, so yes, so each slide we saw through the images of the muscles, named it, identified it. We talked about the nerve supply and important clinical points related to it. Hope this session was useful. If useful, kindly give your feedback. We can do the same for the rest of the anatomy, covering muscles of the abdominal wall, muscles in the thorax region, head and neck and all, right? In your upcoming INICT or NEET PG entrance examination, there's going to be one image-based question, either from the muscles of upper limb or lower limb. It can be a cadaveric image and nerve supply, action, clinical points related to it is extremely important. And as I told you, it is a must know topic. In case if you don't remember it or you skip it, then you have no chances to excuse yourself, right? Thank you.